The Vampire King stood in the rain with a photograph in his hand and murder on his mind, except the woman shivering against the bookstore wall looked nothing like his target. Severin Quade had ruled the Northern Court for 3 centuries, survived 6 wars, and never once questioned an order from his war council until tonight. The photograph showed a sharp-featured intelligence operative named Adrian Stokes, mid-30s, dark hair pulled severely back, the kind of woman who carried classified files and knew too much about vampire safehouses. The council had been clear. She'd leaked information that cost them 2 hidden estates and 7 lives. Drain her. Make it look like an accident. Send a message to the human agencies that some lines could not be crossed, but this woman huddled beneath the bookstore's awning was younger, maybe 24, her auburn hair plastered to her face by the downpour. She wore a coffee-stained apron beneath her soaked jacket and clutched a broken umbrella like it had personally betrayed her. When she looked up at him, her eyes were kind. "You're going to catch your death out here," she said, her voice rough with the beginning of a cold. "There's room under here if you want. Not much, but better than nothing." Severin stood frozen, rain streaming down his white hair and the stark, pale skin that marked him as other even in the dim streetlight. He should walk away. Find the real target. Complete the mission his counsel demanded. But something in her earnest offer, made to a stranger who looked like a ghost in the darkness, pinned him in place. "You're the one who's shivering," he said, slipping the photograph back into his coat pocket and stepping beneath the inadequate shelter of the awning. Up close, she looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from too many double shifts and not enough sleep. "How long have you been out here?" "Bus stopped running." She tried to smile, but her teeth chattered through it. "I thought I could walk home before the storm hit, but clearly I'm an optimistic idiot. I'm Aria, by the way. Aria Sterling." The name hit him like a fist to the chest. Sterling. Same surname as his target. He kept his expression carefully neutral, every instinct suddenly screaming warnings. "Severin." "Nice to meet you, Severin." She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "Do you have somewhere to go? Someone expecting you?" The genuine concern in her question made something twist uncomfortably in his chest. When was the last time anyone had asked if he was safe, if he had somewhere warm to return to? His court expected reports, his counsel demanded results, his subjects offered deference but actual care. That was a currency he'd forgotten existed. "I do," he said slowly. "But you don't, do you? Your apartment is still miles away." Aria laughed, a sound that turned into a cough. "Like I said, optimistic idiot. I'll be fine. The rain has to stop eventually, right? That's how weather works." Except it didn't stop. If anything, the downpour intensified, thunder rolling overhead like artillery. Severin watched her shiver harder, watched the color drain from her face as the cold and wet sapped her remaining strength. He should leave. Should find the real Adrian Stokes, complete his mission, return to his court with his duty fulfilled. This woman was clearly not the intelligence operative. Same surname, wrong everything else. A coincidence, mistaken identity, not his problem. But when her knees buckled and she started to collapse, his arms caught her before conscious thought could interfere. "Sorry," she mumbled against his chest, barely conscious. "Sorry, I just need to sit down for a minute." She was burning with fever despite the cold, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Pneumonia, probably, or close to it. Humans were so fragile, so easily broken by things that couldn't touch him anymore. He could walk away, lower her gently to the ground, call an ambulance from a safe distance, disappear into the night like he'd planned. Instead, Severin Quade adjusted his grip, lifted her fully into his arms, and started walking through the rain toward the one place he'd sworn never to bring a human: his home. His penthouse occupied the top floor of a building that didn't officially exist on any city map, protected by wards old enough to predate the street grid itself. The elevator recognized his presence and rose without him touching a button, smooth and silent as a held breath. Aria stirred slightly in his arms, mumbling something about needing to feed her cat, and he found himself hoping she had someone to take care of it, found himself caring about this stranger's small domestic concerns in a way that should have been impossible. The doors opened directly into his living space, all dark wood and older-than-memory artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a city full of humans who had no idea what lived above them. He carried her to the guest room, laid her on sheets that had never been used, and stood staring at her for a full minute before his paralysis broke. She needed dry clothes, medicine, warmth. He'd lived for 300 years, but suddenly couldn't remember the last time he'd cared for someone sick. His kind healed too quickly to need nursing. But humans were different. He found clothes in storage, a shirt of his that would drown her but was clean and dry. Changed her with clinical efficiency, centuries of discipline keeping his thoughts professional even as he registered that she was lovely in an uncomplicated way his world rarely allowed. Built a fire in the fireplace because the central heating felt too sterile. Found medicine in a cabinet he kept stocked for human visitors he never actually invited over. She swallowed the pills without fully waking, trustingly, and something about that trust made him feel simultaneously honored and horrifyingly unworthy. His phone buzzed, a text from Lucian, his second in command. "Council wants confirmation. Is it done?" Severin stared at the message, then at the woman sleeping in his guest bed, then back at the message. 3 centuries of loyalty to his court. 3 centuries of following orders, maintaining the delicate political balance that kept his people safe. 3 centuries of being exactly what a king should be. He turned off his phone. When Aria woke, sunlight was streaming through windows that shouldn't exist. She sat up slowly, her head pounding but her lungs clearer than they'd been in days, and tried to piece together how she'd gotten from a bookstore awning to the most beautiful bedroom she'd ever seen. "You're awake." The voice came from the doorway, and she turned to find the man from the rain watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. In daylight, he looked even more unusual. That snow-white hair, the pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the sun, the eyes that were too dark and too knowing for a normal human face. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck made of rain and stupidity." Aria touched her temple gingerly. "What happened? I remember the storm and you, and then nothing." "You collapsed. I brought you here." Severin moved into the room with a grace that made her think of dancers or predators, carrying a tray with tea and toast. "You've been asleep for almost 14 hours. 14, panic spiked through her. "My job, my cat. Oh God, I have to call in, I have to. Your cat is fine. I sent someone to check on her and leave food." He set the tray on the bedside table, and she noticed he hadn't answered about her job. "Drink the tea. You need to stay hydrated." Aria reached for the cup, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. "You sent someone to check on my cat? You don't even know where I live. Your ID was in your pocket." He said it simply, as if breaking into someone's apartment to feed their pet was perfectly reasonable behavior. "I hope you don't mind. I thought you'd worry." She should mind. Should be screaming, probably, or at least deeply uncomfortable with this beautiful stranger who'd carried her to his home and managed her life while she slept. But the tea was exactly the right temperature, and someone had indeed fed Mr. Whiskers, and she was alive instead of dead from exposure in a gutter somewhere. "Thank you," she said instead, surprising herself. "That's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in I don't know how long." Something flickered across his face, too fast to name. "You thanked me last night too, before you collapsed. Offered to share your shelter with a stranger in the rain. Well, you looked like you needed it." Aria sipped her tea, studying him over the rim. "You still look like you need something, actually. Like you're carrying the weight of the world and won't let anyone help." Severin went very still. "You see that after one conversation in a storm? I work in a diner. You learn to read people." She set down the cup. "So are you going to tell me why you really brought me here, Severin? Because I'm guessing this penthouse that doesn't show up on GPS and apparently has magic elevators isn't standard rescue protocol." He could lie. Should lie. Spin some story about Good Samaritan impulses and convenient proximity. Instead, he found himself sitting on the edge of her bed, close enough to feel her warmth, and telling her a version of the truth. "I was supposed to meet someone last night, someone I had business with." He watched her face carefully. "But I found you instead, and you seemed to need help more than I needed to keep that appointment." "Business in the rain at midnight?" Aria raised an eyebrow. "You're either very dedicated or into something I probably shouldn't ask about." The latter would be wiser. He allowed himself a small smile. But I find I don't want you to be wise about this. I want you to keep asking questions. Why? Because no one's asked me real questions in longer than you'd believe. The words came out rougher than he intended. Everyone in my life either fears me or wants something from me or both. But you looked at me in the rain and saw someone who might be cold. That's rare. Aria felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. This man who looked like winter personified, who moved like liquid shadow, who clearly had secrets that would probably terrify her if she knew them, he was lonely. She recognized it because she wore the same expression every time she looked in the mirror. "Well," she said softly, "you did save my life. The least I can do is ask you real questions. Starting with, what do you do that has you conducting business at midnight in thunderstorms?" "I manage certain interests for certain people who prefer privacy." Not a lie, technically. It's complicated and often thankless, but it's the responsibility I was born into. Family business? Something like that. He stood, moving to the window, as if the sunlight didn't hurt him at all, because he was old enough and powerful enough that it didn't. Not anymore, though she couldn't know that. "You should rest another day. Make sure the fever doesn't return." "I can't stay here another day. I have rent and bills and a job that definitely fired me by now. I called your employer, told them you were ill and under a doctor's care." Severin turned back to her, backlit by sun that turned his white hair into a corona. "They were understanding, and your rent is not a concern I'll allow you to carry right now." "You can't just pay my rent," Aria's voice rose. "You don't even know me. Then stay. Let me know you." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning he couldn't quite hide. "I have space. You need time to recover. It's a simple arrangement." It wasn't simple at all, and they both knew it. But Aria found herself nodding anyway, found herself wanting to understand this strange, courteous man who carried wounded strangers home and cared about their cats. "Okay," she whispered, "a few days, until I'm steady." His smile transformed his face, adding warmth to features that had seemed carved from ice. "Good. That's good." Over the next week, Aria discovered that Severin Quade was the most fascinating person she'd ever met, and also possibly completely insane. He kept hours that made no sense, sleeping through most of the day and coming alive after sunset. He spoke half a dozen languages and referenced historical events like he'd been present for them. His kitchen was immaculate, but clearly unused, as if the idea of cooking was foreign to him. But he was also funny in a dry, unexpected way, kind in gestures small and large, and when he looked at her, really looked at her, she felt seen in a way that made her breath catch. "Tell me about your family," she said one evening, curled on his couch while he read a book that looked older than the building. "You never mention them. They're demanding, traditional, disappointed in most of my choices." He didn't look up from the page. "The usual family dynamics, magnified by time and expectation." "Do you see them often?" "More than I'd like, less than they expect." He turned a page with careful precision. "They have very specific ideas about who I should be and what I should do. Recently, those expectations have become burdensome." Aria pulled a blanket tighter around herself. "Is that why you were out in the rain that night, running from their expectations?" "Walking toward them, actually." He finally looked at her, and something in his expression made her shiver. "Or I was supposed to be. But then I found you, and everything changed." "I didn't change anything. I was just a girl with a broken umbrella." "You offered shelter to a stranger who looked dangerous. You smiled at someone you had no reason to trust." Severin set down his book. "Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is? In a world that teaches people to look away, you looked at me and chose kindness." "You're making me sound like some kind of saint. I'm really not." Aria laughed, but it came out shaky. "I'm a community college dropout working at a diner and living in a studio apartment with a cat. I'm nobody special." "You're wrong." He moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "You're someone who matters. Maybe not to the world, but to the people around you. I've watched you this week, the way you called your coworker to check on her kid, the way you left extra food out for the stray cat you pretend not to feed. You move through the world leaving it gentler than you found it." That's not nothing, Aria. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the way he said her name, like it was something precious. Severin. His phone shattered the moment, buzzing with the insistence of someone who wouldn't be ignored. He glanced at the screen and his expression went carefully blank. I need to take this, excuse me. He stood and moved to his study, but not before she saw the name on the caller ID, Lucian. The conversation was brief and tense, Severin's voice too low for her to make out words. When he returned, he looked like a man preparing for battle. I have to go out. Family business that can't wait any longer. He pulled on a coat that looked like it cost more than her car. Stay inside. Don't answer the door for anyone. I'll be back before dawn. That's weirdly specific. Aria stood, worry knotting her stomach. Are you in trouble? Is this dangerous? Not for me. He paused at the door. But Aria, if anything happens, if anyone comes here asking about me, tell them you don't know anything. Tell them you're just someone I helped. Don't let them make you important to me. Why would they? Promise me. The command in his voice raised goosebumps on her arms. Please, I promise. She wrapped her arms around herself. But you're scaring me. Severin crossed back to her in 3 strides, cupped her face in hands that were cool but gentle. I would never let anything hurt you. Never. You have to trust that. Then he was gone, and Aria was left standing in a penthouse that suddenly felt too large and too empty, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The council met in chambers beneath the city, old stone and older power, the kind of room that had witnessed centuries of vampire politics. Severin stood before them with his spine straight and his expression calm, even though he could feel their anger like a physical weight. You were given a direct order. Councilwoman Theron's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Eliminate the Sterling woman. Remove the threat she posed to our security. Instead, you went silent for a week. Explain yourself, my king. Severin let the title hang there, a reminder that they served him as much as he served them. The intelligence was wrong. The woman I found was not the operative you described. She's a waitress, a civilian with no knowledge of our world. She carries the same name. A coincidence. He kept his voice level. I verified it myself. She has no connection to the intelligence community, no access to classified information, no reason to be targeted. Killing her would have been murder, not justice. Councilman Drake leaned forward, his ancient face creased with suspicion. And yet you brought her to your personal residence, kept her under your protection. One might think you've grown attached. One might think I have better judgment than to slaughter innocents based on incomplete information. Severin let steel enter his tone. Or would you prefer I become the kind of king who kills first and asks questions never? I seem to recall that's what we overthrew 2 centuries ago. The reminder of the bloody coup that had brought him to power landed like he'd intended. The council shifted uncomfortably. There's still the matter of the real Adrian Stokes, Lucian said quietly from his position at Severin's right hand. She continues to operate, continue to threaten us. Then give me accurate information and I'll handle her. Severin met each council member's eyes in turn. But I will not kill humans based on sloppy intelligence. That's not negotiable. Theron's smile was cold. And the waitress? What becomes of her now that you've exposed her to our world? She knows nothing, suspects nothing. I'll ensure she returns to her life unharmed and unaware. The lies tasted like ash, but he forced them out smoothly. She's not a factor. See that she isn't. Drake's tone carried a clear threat. Because if she becomes a liability, we'll handle her ourselves, with or without your approval. Severin felt rage flash through him, hot and dangerous, but he kept it locked behind centuries of practice. Understood. Is there anything else? The dismissal in his question was deliberate. He was their king, not their servant, and they needed to remember that. The council exchanged glances, then reluctantly shook their heads. Outside the chambers, Lucian caught his arm. You're playing with fire, my friend. They're not wrong to be suspicious. They're afraid. Severin shook off his grip. Afraid that I'm not as controllable as they'd like. Afraid that I might actually think for myself instead of following their war plans blindly. Is she worth it? Lucian's pale eyes searched his face. This human girl? Is she worth standing against the council? Severin thought of Aria curled on his couch, asking real questions and offering genuine smiles. Thought of the way she'd looked at him in the rain with kindness instead of fear. Thought of how alive he'd felt this past week, how human in the best sense of the word. Yes, he said quietly. I think she might be. When he returned to the penthouse just before dawn, he found Aria asleep on the couch, wrapped in blankets and clearly waiting for him. She woke when he entered, blinking away sleep. You're back, relief flooded her voice. I was worried. I told you I would be. He sat beside her, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. You should be in bed. I wanted to make sure you were okay. She reached out hesitantly, then laid her hand over his. Your hands are cold. Are you feeling all right? He stared at their joined hands, at the trust implicit in her touch. She had no idea what he was, no idea that her warmth was human life he could drain in seconds. No idea that he'd just been in a room full of vampires debating whether she should live or die. Aria. Her name came out rough. There are things about me you don't know, things that would frighten you if you understood. So tell me, she squeezed his hand, I'm not as fragile as you think. You're human. The word slipped out before he could stop it, weighted with meaning. You're beautifully, perfectly human, and I'm different, I know. She smiled. You don't eat, you don't sleep at night, you're strong enough to carry me like I weigh nothing and fast enough that sometimes I can't track your movements. Your eyes do this thing in dim light where they almost seem to glow. And you have friends with names like Lucian who make you tense just by calling. Severin froze. You knew. I suspected. Aria's voice stayed steady. I've been here a week, Severin. I'm observant, remember? And you're not as subtle as you think when you're comfortable. And you're not afraid. It wasn't a question, but wonder colored his tone. Should I be? She met his eyes directly. Have you hurt me? Threatened me? Done anything except save my life and treat me with more kindness than I knew existed? No, but then why would I be afraid? She turned her hand to lace her fingers through his. I don't know what you are exactly, but I know who you are. The man who feeds strangers cats, who calls their employers to save their jobs, who reads century-old books and laughs at terrible movies and looks at me like I'm something wonderful when I know I'm just ordinary. You're not ordinary. He raised their joined hands to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a vow. You're extraordinary, and you're in danger because of me, and I don't know how to keep you safe except to send you away. Then don't. Aria's voice dropped to a whisper. Don't send me away. I don't want to go. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand that I've never felt this way before. She moved closer, close enough that he could feel her heartbeat, smell the warmth of her blood beneath her skin. I understand that when you look at me, I feel seen. When you smile, I feel like I matter. And when you touch me, she broke off, color rising in her cheeks. I'm falling for you, Severin. Maybe that's stupid or reckless or impossibly naive, but it's true. He should discourage her, should lie and say he felt nothing, should put distance between them before the council made good on their threat, should protect her the only way he knew how, by pushing her away. Instead, he kissed her. It was gentle at first, testing, giving her every chance to pull back, but she pressed closer instead, her hands coming up to tangle in his white hair, and he was lost. 300 years of discipline shattered against the sweetness of her mouth, the trust in her touch, the impossible gift of her wanting him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm a vampire, he said quietly. King of the Northern Court, over 300 years old, and I was sent to kill you. Aria went very still. What? Not you specifically, someone with your name, a woman who posed a threat to my people. The words came faster now, like poison he needed to purge. The council gave me orders. Find her, drain her, leave her body as a warning. I went to that street corner planning murder. But you didn't. Her voice was barely a whisper. You didn't kill me. Because you weren't her. You were just a kind woman with a broken umbrella who offered shelter to a stranger. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes, needing her to see his sincerity. And when you collapsed, I couldn't leave you, couldn't follow my orders. I brought you here instead, and I've been lying to my council ever since, telling them you're no one, you're nothing. You're already forgotten. But I'm not. Tears tracked down her cheeks. I'm not forgotten. No, he cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away tears. You're everything, and that terrifies me because they'll use it against both of us. They've already threatened to handle you themselves if they think you're a liability. And his voice broke. I've existed for 3 centuries without fear, but the thought of losing you paralyzes me. Aria processed this, her mind racing. The real woman, the one you were supposed to kill. What happened to her? Still alive, still a threat, Severin's jaw tightened. And as long as she operates, the council has an excuse to circle back to this, to question my judgment, to wonder if my mercy toward you means I'm compromised. So we find her. Aria straightened, wiping her eyes. We find the real Adrian Stokes, and we figure out what she actually did, and we handle it. Together. You want to help hunt down a dangerous intelligence operative? Disbelief colored his tone. Aria, this isn't a game. These are people who've toppled governments, who trade in secrets that start wars. And I'm the woman you were supposed to kill who's still breathing because you chose mercy over orders. Fire entered her voice. I have a stake in this now, Severin. Your council thinks I'm a liability? Fine. Let me prove I'm an asset instead. Let me help you fix this. He stared at her, this fierce, impossible human who'd learned he was a vampire king who'd planned her murder and decided the solution was to work together. You should be running, screaming, anything but volunteering for more danger. Probably. She leaned in and kissed him again, quick and certain. But I meant what I said. I'm falling for you. And I don't run from the people I care about, even when they're complicated vampire kings with murder in their recent past. Despite everything, Severin laughed. You're insane. I prefer optimistically stupid. We established that the night we met. She stood, pulling him up with her. So where do we start? How do we find the real Adrian Stokes? Finding her turned out to be easier than expected. Lucian, once Severin explained the situation in carefully edited terms, provided intelligence files that painted a picture of a woman who'd been feeding vampire safe-house locations to a hunter network. Not out of malice, apparently, but because she'd lost her sister to a rogue vampire and wanted revenge on anything with fangs. Grief? Aria said softly, reading over Severin's shoulder in his study. She's acting from grief. Grief that's gotten 7 of my people killed. Severin's voice was hard. I can understand her pain without excusing her actions. I'm not asking you to excuse them. Aria tapped the photo of Adrienne, noting the resemblance to herself was superficial at best. Similar coloring, same surname, but that's where it ended. I'm saying grief is something we can work with, talk to, maybe even resolve without more killing. The council wants blood. The council isn't here right now. You are. She turned to face him. You're the king, Severin. You told me that yourself. So be the king who makes the hard choice toward mercy instead of the easy choice toward violence. He wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that vampire politics didn't work that way, that showing weakness invited challenges, that 300 years of rule had taught him when to be ruthless. But looking at Aria's hopeful face, he found he wanted to be the man she saw when she looked at him, someone capable of mercy and strength in equal measure. If this goes wrong, he started, then we'll handle it together. She took his hand. But at least we'll have tried. They found Adrian Stokes in a coffee shop 3 blocks from where Severin had originally been sent to kill Aria, and the irony wasn't lost on any of them. She looked up when they approached, her hand sliding toward what was probably a weapon until Severin raised both palms in a gesture of peace. I'm not here to hurt you, he said quietly. I'm here to talk. Adrian's eyes flicked from him to Aria and back again. You're one of them. Vampire. I can smell it on you. Northern Court King, actually. Severin slid into the booth across from her without waiting for an invitation, Aria beside him. Which means I have the authority to negotiate on behalf of the vampires you've been targeting. I don't negotiate with monsters, but her hand moved away from the weapon. My sister was killed by a monster too, Aria said, the lie coming smoothly. They'd rehearsed this. Car accident caused by a drunk driver who walked away without a scratch. I understand wanting revenge, wanting someone to pay. Adrian's expression cracked, just slightly. Then you understand why I can't stop. I understand why you feel that way. Aria's voice stayed gentle. But would your sister want this? Want you spending your life destroying others because she's gone? Or would she want you to heal and live and maybe find a way to prevent what happened to her from happening to anyone else? You don't know anything about my sister. Tears glittered in Adrian's eyes. No, Severin said, but I know about the 7 vampires you helped kill. 3 of them were over a century old. 2 had families. 1 was a doctor who'd spent decades working in human hospitals saving lives. They weren't the rogue who killed your sister. They were just convenient targets. They were vampires. So am I. He leaned forward. And I'm offering you a choice. Keep fighting, keep feeding locations to hunters, and I'll have to stop you. It won't be pleasant, and it won't end well for either of us. Or you can help me find the actual rogue who killed your sister, and we'll deliver justice together. Real justice, not wholesale slaughter. Adrian stared at him. Why would you help me? I've been trying to destroy your people. Because she's right. He gestured to Aria. Because revenge is a poison that destroys the person who drinks it. Because I'm trying to be better than the sum of my worst impulses. He paused. And because I know what it's like to lose someone and feel powerless. I don't want that for you, even if you've been my enemy. The silence stretched. Then Adrian pulled out a tablet, fingers shaking slightly as she called up files. His name was Marcus Vane. Rogue vampire, no court affiliation, been off the grid for 5 years. She turned the screen toward them. This is everything I have on him, which isn't much because your people have been less than forthcoming. Severin studied the information, then nodded slowly. I know this bloodline. They've been trouble before. Give me 2 weeks and I'll find him. And then what? Adrian's voice was hard. Then I'll make sure he faces justice under vampire law, which for his crimes will mean execution. Severin met her eyes. You won't get to do it yourself, but you'll have closure. And in exchange, you stop feeding information to hunters. You stop being a threat to innocents. Deal? Adrian looked between them for a long moment. Who's she, really? Because I know she's not your assistant or whatever cover story you're selling. Someone who changed my mind about mercy, Severin said simply. Someone worth being better for. 2 weeks later, Marcus Vane was Ash and Adrian Stokes was in witness protection with a new identity. Courtesy of vampire resources Severin pulled strings to access. The council was furious about his methods but couldn't argue with results. The threat was neutralized, the leak was plugged, and no more of their people had died. You set a dangerous precedent, Theron told him in chambers, her voice ice, showing mercy to someone who killed our kind. I set a precedent of thinking before killing, Severin corrected, of understanding that not every problem requires bloodshed. If that's dangerous, so be it. And the human? Drake's question carried weight. The Sterling woman? You said she was no one, but rumors suggest otherwise. Severin had prepared for this, had known it was coming. Aria Sterling is under my personal protection. She knows what I am. She's chosen to stay anyway. And before you object, remember that our laws don't forbid human companions, only careless exposure of our nature. She's not careless, she's extraordinary, and she's mine. The word hung in the air, a claim and a warning. You mean to turn her? Theron's eyes narrowed. Bring her over fully? If she wants it. He kept his voice level. But that's between her and me, not council business. Everything about the king is council business. No. The word cracked like a whip. My reign is council business. My policies are council business. My heart is my own, and I've spent 3 centuries serving this court with everything I have. I'm not asking permission to love someone. I'm informing you that I do, and she's under my protection, and anyone who threatens her threatens me. Are we clear? The silence was absolute. Then, slowly, the council members inclined their heads. Not approval, but acknowledgement. For now, it was enough. Severin found Aria waiting in his penthouse, curled on the couch with Mr. Whiskers she'd moved the cat in weeks ago, and he'd pretended to object while secretly buying premium cat food. She looked up when he entered, reading his expression. It went badly. It went exactly as expected. He sat beside her, pulling her close. They're not happy, but they've accepted it. You're safe. We're safe, she corrected, kissing his temple. Because this is an us thing now, remember? How could I forget? He tilted her chin up, memorizing her face in the lamplight. You charged into my world without hesitation, helped me find a better path, made me believe I could be more than what 3 centuries of rule had shaped me into. You were always more, she traced the line of his jaw. You just needed someone to remind you. Aria. He took a breath he didn't need, centuries of certainty warring with new possibilities. The council asked if I intended to turn you, make you vampire, and I realized I didn't know what you wanted, what you'd choose if the choice was yours. She went still. Are you offering? Eventually. Not now, you're too newly in this world, and turning is permanent in ways humans can't fully grasp until after. His hand found hers, laced their fingers together. But someday, if you wanted it, I would share eternity with you. I would teach you our ways and watch you become something magnificent. I would make you my queen in truth, not just in my heart. Aria felt tears prick her eyes. That's the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. You don't have to decide now. I know, she kissed him, soft and certain. But I also know that I've never felt this alive, this seen, this wanted. You've given me a world bigger than I imagined and trusted me to navigate it beside you. So yes, someday when the time is right and we're both ready, yes, I choose eternity with you. The kiss that followed tasted like promises and new beginnings, and when they finally broke apart, Severin was grinning in a way he hadn't in decades. My council is going to hate you so much, he said with obvious delight. Good, Aria grinned back. Someone has to keep you from being too diplomatic and kingly all the time. Might as well be me. Outside, rain began to fall again, but this time they listened to it from inside, wrapped around each other on the couch, the storm a reminder of the night everything changed. Aria traced patterns on Severin's chest while he played with her hair, both of them content in the comfortable silence. Tell me about what it's like, she said eventually. Being vampire, really being it, not just the politics and danger but the everyday parts. Severin considered. It's strange at first, then normal. Then you forget you were ever anything else. The hunger is always there, but manageable with practice and ethics. The strength feels natural after a while. The extended senses, the speed, the healing, they become your baseline until you watch humans struggle with things that are effortless to you and remember you were once just as fragile. Do you miss it, being human? I miss the simplicity sometimes, the way humans live in the moment because their moments are numbered. He pressed a kiss to her hair. But I don't miss the weakness, the constant vulnerability, the knowledge that any accident could end me, and I wouldn't trade the life I've lived for anything. Even the hard parts, the wars and politics and council meetings that make you tense, even those, he tipped her face up to meet his eyes, because they led to that rainy night, to you offering shelter to a stranger, to this moment right here where I get to hold someone who chose me knowing exactly what I am. That's worth centuries of difficulty. Aria felt her heart swell. You're such a romantic under all that kingly dignity. Only with you, he kissed her nose. Everyone else gets the dignity. You get the truth. They stayed like that as the rain continued, as night deepened and the city lights blazed below them. Mr. Whiskers eventually joined them on the couch, curling between them with the confidence of a cat who knew he was loved. It was domestic and perfect, and everything Severin had never imagined wanting until it was right in front of him. I should probably quit my job at the diner, Aria said eventually. If I'm going to be learning about vampire courts and politics and eventually turning into one of you, waitressing seems kind of redundant. You loved that job, Severin stroked her hair. Don't give up pieces of yourself for me. I'm not. I'm choosing new pieces. She sat up to look at him properly. I loved the regulars and the rhythm of it, but I was never going to go anywhere. It was safe and familiar and slowly suffocating me. This, she gestured around them. This is adventure, purpose, a life that matters beyond just survival. You always mattered, he said fiercely. Even when you were just a waitress in a coffee-stained apron, you mattered. I know, because you saw me. She cupped his face. And now I want to build something bigger than myself, something that uses this second chance you gave me. Maybe I could help with the human relation side of your court, bridge the gap between our worlds. Severin felt something shift in his chest, puzzle pieces locking into place. You want to be an ambassador. Is that crazy? Too ambitious? Anxiety crept into her voice. It's perfect. He pulled her into his lap, holding her close. The council has been after me for years to establish better human outreach, and I've been resisting because I didn't trust anyone to do it right. But you understand both worlds. You lead with empathy, but you're not naive. You'd be extraordinary at it. Really? Her face lit up. You're not just saying that? I never just say anything. Comes with being a king. He kissed her soundly. But this I mean with everything I am. You'd be brilliant. And having you working beside me, building something new together, there's nothing I want more. They talked through the night, planning and dreaming and slowly building a vision of what their future could look like. Aria would train with Lucian to understand vampire culture and politics. She'd keep her humanity for now, establishing herself as a bridge figure before turning changed her too much. They'd start small, with community outreach programs and human-vampire dialogue sessions, and build from there. The council will object, Severin warned. They'll say you're too young, too human, too untested. Let them. Aria's chin came up. I've gotten good at proving people wrong, and I'll have you backing me, right? Always. He said it like a vow. In council chambers and everywhere else. You're mine to protect, mine to support, mine to love. They'll learn that quickly enough. As dawn approached, Severin reluctantly moved Aria to the bedroom, tucking her in with a tenderness that would have shocked his council. She caught his hand before he could retreat to his own light-proof quarters. Stay, she whispered, just until I fall asleep. So he did, sitting beside her in the growing light that couldn't quite reach through his blackout curtains, holding her hand while she drifted off. When her breathing evened out into sleep, he pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered words in a language she didn't speak yet, promises and prayers and gratitude to whatever force had put her in his path. The next months blurred together in the best possible way. Aria proved to be a natural at vampire politics, her genuine warmth disarming even the most skeptical council members. She established dialogue programs that brought humans and vampires together in controlled, safe environments, slowly eroding decades of mutual suspicion. She learned their history and laws with the same determination she'd applied to memorizing diner orders, and when she made mistakes, she acknowledged them and adapted. Severin watched her flourish with something like awe. This woman who'd been shivering in the rain was now standing before vampire nobility and arguing policy changes with confidence and grace. She'd found her purpose, and it was beautiful. She's good for you, Lucian said one evening, watching Severin watch Aria work a room full of vampires and human liaisons. I haven't seen you this settled in decades. She makes me want to be better. Severin accepted a glass of wine he wouldn't drink, keeping up appearances. Not because she demands it, but because she believes I already am. It's impossible not to try to live up to that faith. The council's warming to her too, slowly, but it's happening. Lucian paused. Theron actually smiled during her presentation on interspecies healthcare initiatives. I didn't think Theron could smile. Aria has that effect. Pride colored Severin's voice. She sees people, not positions, makes everyone feel heard. When will you turn her? The question was casual, but Lucian's eyes were sharp. When she's ready. When she's built enough human connections that leaving that world is a choice she makes with full understanding, not something she rushes into for my sake. Severin set down his glass. She deserves to be certain. And if she decides she wants to stay human, grow old while you remain unchanged? The question hit harder than intended. Severin had spent countless nights wrestling with that possibility, imagining Aria aging while he stayed frozen, watching her slow down and eventually leave him. The thought was agony. Then I'll love her anyway, he said quietly, for however long I have her, and I'll make every moment count. Lucian studied him for a long moment. You really mean that? I really do. Severin met his oldest friend's eyes. She's taught me that love isn't about possession or eternity. It's about choosing each other every day for however many days you get. If she wants mortality, I'll give her the best mortal life imaginable. And when she's gone, I'll carry her with me. Forever. You've changed, Lucian said, not unkindly. The king who went out to kill her never would have said that. That king never would have carried a stranger home in the rain either. Severin smiled, but she changed everything. Showed me mercy doesn't mean weakness, that kindness can be its own strength. I'm better for knowing her, regardless of how long we have. Across the room, Aria looked up and met his eyes, her whole face lighting with a smile meant only for him. And Severin thought, not for the first time, that maybe he was the one who'd been saved that rainy night. Nearly a year after the night they met, Aria stood in Severin's penthouse watching rain stream down the windows and feeling perfectly, completely content. She'd just finished her first major policy presentation to the full Vampire Council, and it had gone better than she dared hope. 3 separate council members had approached her afterward with genuine compliments and follow-up questions. "You were magnificent," Severin said from behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. Even Theron looked impressed. "I was terrified." Aria leaned into his embrace. "My hands were shaking so hard I thought I'd drop the tablet." "No one could tell. You looked like you'd been addressing vampire royalty your whole life." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm so proud of you." Aria turned in his arms to face him. "I couldn't have done any of it without you. You gave me this chance, this life. You believed in me when I was nobody. You were never nobody." His hands came up to frame her face. "But I understand what you mean. And for what it's worth, you've given me just as much. Purpose beyond duty, joy beyond politics, a reason to be more than just a king." "Severin," she took a breath, steadying herself. "I've been thinking about what you asked, about turning, about eternity." His hands tensed slightly against her face. "And I want it." The words came out clear and certain. "Not right this second. I want to finish setting up the healthcare initiative first, establish it firmly enough that it'll continue after I transition, but soon, within the year, I want forever with you." Severin's expression transformed, joy and relief and love blazing across his features. "Are you certain? Truly certain?" "Because there's no undoing it, Aria. Once you turn, you're vampire forever. The humanity you've known, the life you had before it all changes." "I know." She reached up to cover his hands with hers. "And I've thought about it constantly. Talked to every turned vampire I could find, asked every question I could think of. I know what I'm giving up, but I also know what I'm gaining. Eternity with the man I love, time to build something meaningful, the strength to protect the things I care about. The choice is easy, Severin. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this life we're building together." He kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I will make you so happy," he whispered. "I swear it. Every century, every decade, every moment, I will spend all of it loving you." "I know," she smiled through happy tears. "You already do." The turning happened 6 months later, after Aria had put her affairs in order and said careful goodbyes to the human connections she'd need to sever. Severin made it as gentle as possible, holding her through the pain and the change, whispering reassurances and promises while her body remade itself. When she woke 3 days later, with vampire eyes and vampire strength and vampire hunger, the first thing she saw was Severin's face, love and anxiety warring in his expression. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. Aria took stock, the sharpness of her senses, the power humming through her veins, the strange absence of her heartbeat, the hunger coiled in her belly. Everything was different and overwhelming and perfect. "Like I can hear the rain on the roof 6 floors up," she said wonderingly. "Like I can count every thread in the sheets, like I'm finally fully awake after living my whole life half asleep." Relief flooded his face. The hunger, present but manageable, just like you taught me to expect. She sat up slowly, marveling at the ease of movement. "Severin, this is incredible. You're incredible." He pulled her into his arms, and she could feel his happiness like a physical thing. "My queen, my love, my eternity." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while rain fell outside, and the newly made vampire learned the shape of her new existence. Eventually, hunger drove them to the carefully prepared blood stores Severin had ready, and Aria learned what it meant to feed without killing, to take only what was freely given. "It gets easier," Severin promised, watching her navigate her first feeding with the awkwardness of all new vampires. "More natural, until you can't remember struggling with it." I have eternity to practice. Aria looked at him over the rim of the glass, her new eyes catching light in ways her human ones never had. We have eternity. We do. He set aside his own glass and pulled her close again, unable to stop touching her now that the worst danger had passed. What do you want to do with it? Besides continuing your work with human relations, I mean, what dreams can I help you build? Aria thought about it, thought about the endless years stretching ahead, about all the possibilities now open to her. I want to travel, see the places you've lived across 3 centuries, understand your history by walking through it. Done. What else? I want to learn languages, all of them, eventually. Be able to speak to anyone in their own tongue. I'll teach you myself. What else? I want, she paused, suddenly shy. I want to build a real home with you. Not just your penthouse, beautiful as it is, but something that's ours, that we choose together. Maybe somewhere we can hear the rain. Severin felt his heart, long stilled, somehow swell anyway. I know just the place. An estate in the countryside, old stone and older trees, with gardens we can walk through at night. It's been empty for decades because I could never picture living there alone. But with you, with me, it's home, Aria finished. Yes, that. Exactly that. They made plans late into the night, 2 immortals planning centuries like humans planned weekends. They'd split time between the estate and the city, between vampire politics and quiet domesticity. They'd travel and learn and build and grow. They'd love each other through every season and every storm. Do you ever think about that night? Aria asked as dawn approached, curled against Severin in the bed that had become theirs. About what would have happened if you'd followed your orders. Every day. His arms tightened around her. Every single day I think about how close I came to the worst mistake of my existence, how easily I could have destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. But you didn't. She tilted her face up to kiss his jaw. You chose mercy, chose to carry a stranger home instead of leaving her in the rain, chose love over duty. I chose you, he corrected. Everything else just followed from that. A year later, they stood together in the rain outside their estate, water streaming down their faces while they laughed at some joke only they understood. Aria's transition had been smoother than most, her natural empathy translating well to vampire senses, and she'd taken to immortality like she'd been born for it. The council had formally recognized her as queen 6 months ago, and she wore the title as comfortably as she wore Severin's love. Remember the first time we stood in the rain together? Aria asked, tilting her face to the sky. You looked so serious, so prepared to do something terrible. I was prepared. Severin pulled her close, unbothered by the water soaking through expensive clothes. Prepared to complete a mission and return to my lonely existence and never know what I was missing. Thank God you smiled at me. Thank God you couldn't do it. She looped her arms around his neck. Thank God you chose to carry me home instead. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her in the rain, the way he'd wanted to that first night, the way he'd get to for centuries to come. Even if it meant facing down an angry council and remaking vampire politics and generally upending my entire existence. Especially because of that. Aria grinned against his mouth. I like you upended. It's a good look on you. They made their way inside eventually, leaving wet footprints across ancient floors, and settled in front of the fire that they kept burning for ambiance rather than warmth. Mr. Whiskers, who'd transitioned to country life with surprising enthusiasm, joined them on the couch. Do you think we'll ever get bored? Aria asked, running her fingers through Severin's white hair while he read a book that was older than some countries. After a century or two, will this feel routine? Ask me in a century, Severin said, setting aside the book to give her his full attention. But I've existed for 300 years and nothing has felt as right as this, as you. I don't think time will dull that. Good, she kissed him softly, because I have a lot of plans for our eternity, and they all involve you. Tell me, he invited, pulling her fully into his lap. Tell me everything you want from our forever. So she did, spinning dreams and plans while rain fell outside and the fire crackled, and Severin listened like her words were treasures. They talked about the foundation they'd start for human-vampire relations, about the children they might adopt someday when they were ready to parent across centuries, about the world they'd helped build together. "I love you," Aria said when the plans had wound down into comfortable silence. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You saved my life that night, but you did more than that. You showed me what life could be, what I could be. You saved mine too." Severin cupped her face, memorizing her features even though he had forever to study them now. "I was existing, not living, going through motions, following orders, being what everyone expected. But you looked at me and saw someone worth saving, worth knowing, worth loving. You gave me back my humanity, even as I gave you immortality. We saved each other then." Aria's smile was radiant. Fair trade. The fairest. He pulled her down for a kiss that started gentle and deepened into promise. "My queen, my love, my choice, my king," she whispered back. "My savior, my home." Outside, the rain continued, but inside they were warm and safe and perfectly, impossibly happy. The vampire king who'd been sent to kill had instead found the love of his long existence. The human woman who'd offered shelter to a stranger had found her purpose and her partner. And in the space between duty and desire, between orders and choice, between death and life, they'd found each other. The council would continue to demand things, politics would remain complicated, the work of building bridges between their worlds would take centuries. But they'd face it all together, two souls who'd chosen each other against all odds and all logic. And when the rain finally stopped and stars emerged above their estate, Severin carried Aria out to the gardens just to prove he could, just because she laughed when he did, just because carrying her had become his favorite way to show love. She clung to him with vampire strength that matched his own, pressing kisses to his jaw and his temple and anywhere she could reach. "You know I can walk now," she teased. "Super speed and everything." "I know." He adjusted his grip, holding her closer. "But I like carrying you. Reminds me of that first night, of the moment I chose you over everything else I'd known." "Then carry me forever," Aria said, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'll never complain." "Forever," Severin agreed, carrying his queen through gardens that would bloom for centuries, under stars that would watch them love each other through all the years to come. "I can work with forever." And in the peaceful countryside, in the home they'd chosen together, surrounded by the rain-washed night and the promise of endless tomorrows, the vampire king and his queen began the forever they had earned. No more missions, no more loneliness, no more choosing between duty and heart, just love and rain and the infinite gift of choosing each other every night for all the nights to come.